Welcome to Statistically Speaking, a CK Pharma Solutions podcast where Kay
and Caroline.
In each episode, we bring you conversations with industry leaders from pharma, biotech, and CROs.
Together, we explore market insights, career advice, and the latest trends shaping the life sciences industry. Get ready for discussions that inspire, inform, and help you navigate the ever-evolving world of life sciences. This is Statistically Speaking, navigating the world of life sciences.
Welcome to Statistically Speaking. Today's guest has an incredible journey from starting out in statistical programming to clinical data management, rising to VP at a CRO, and now co-founding her own company, AgileDM. She's been a mentor, inventor, and leader in the space, and we're excited to hear her story and lessons she's picked up along the way. So let's get into it. Sheila, welcome to Statistically Speaking. How are you doing?
Doing wonderful. Thank you for having me. Definitely appreciate the time that we're taking today to have a discussion.
Of course. Thank you for coming on. And I guess we'll just start off from the very top. Can you share a little bit about your background and how you got started in the clinical data management industry?
Yes, definitely. So clinical data science has always been a part of my life. My background actually is in biochemistry and with the hopes of going into pharmacy. With that said, I started off as an undergrad at UCSD and jumped in and graduated with my degree in biochemistry and psychology, and then realized, I wanted to make a difference in the lives of patients and helping others. So I actually stumbled across working in a clinical research site. I worked at the UCSD Clinical Trial Center. And with that, I was a study coordinator. I did a lot of also data management coordination work, working with monitors, working with research nurses, principal investigators. And then I crossed over into the CRO, contract research organizational world. And that's where I started my career in data management. And that was in the late 90s. So that's how I started off in this industry. And then I haven't turned back since. Been in there for almost 30 years.
Amazing. A really great career trajectory there. And with that, I wanted to ask, earlier in your career, you mentioned on a previous call that, you started as a clinical data manager, but you also were required to do SAS programming. So what are the most significant changes you've seen in the industry over the years, specifically at CROs and clinical data management?
Back in the days when we first started off doing data management, SAS programming was actually required for us to be able to look at data holistically, accessing data, making sure that we could create reports so we could help do our edit checking and data review. So creating line listings, and then also, looking at TLFs to understand the data and query the data was very important. Now, as the industry has evolved, we've actually segmented a lot of those different roles to different departments. We have statistics, we also have actual statisticians, we have statistical programmers, we have data managers, we have data scientists. So with that said, learning SAS back when we started doing data management 30 years ago was very important so we could be closer to the data. But now things have become much more efficient. A lot of the mid-sized to big CROs have figured out how we could go ahead and implement a smoother process to get your data clean. And therefore, the data manager with that SAS experience, it's good to have. And I think it's very important, actually. But, nowadays, if we're talking about the evolution of data management, that's where we're heading towards right now. We're more hands off as data managers in programming in SAS.
That's so true. Just thinking back to at least the last 5 years of staffing in clinical data management, that's not something I find myself asking clinical data managers about SAS programming. I do know there's obviously candidates out there in data management that do have a background of database programming, have touched on that, but not to the degree of what I'm sure you had to go through and previously, like maybe it was like SQL and SAS and that type of caliber of programming. So it is interesting to see, candidates like yourself that have gone through that journey and now seeing the evolution where I guess these teams are a little bit more siloed in their responsibilities of what they're doing as we see large organizations. And as you mentioned, there being more team, right, of statistical programmers, biostat, and data managers who all individually focus on, one aspect of the clinical trials.
right? And I think it's actually really important to be involved in taking a look at the data. So perhaps maybe the data managers these days do not program in SAS. They don't have access to utilizing any type of programming language to help them look at data. But you do have to be into the data, taking a look at the exports out of the EDC and making heads and tails about the patient and their journey throughout the clinical trial process. That's where you're able to pick up a lot of nuances. And if we're looking at data managers and what that edge is, it's being able to be invested in that data and understanding the importance of how can we look at this data to help improve a patient's life, to help improve the treatments that are going to be eventually offered to them if this treatment works. So again, when I jumped into this industry, and I wanted to be in a field to help people. And I said that in the beginning. So as a part of that, you have to kind of take a look at what you're doing day to day. As you are a clinical researcher, data manager, statistical programmer, monitor, whoever you are, and understand what the end goal is. And with that, you have to put some more time into what you're doing so that you could do that quality work and do that quality review. So that's my my approach when it comes to doing data management.
That's so true. And then we'd love to understand, if you could walk us through the pivotal moments or decisions that help you progress to a VP role at a CRO.
So VP roles are different in every organization. I started off at small CRO. So I worked through 4 different CROs in my lifetime, and I stay at jobs for a very long time. 12 years, 13 years, 10 years. And then progression comes with understanding the craft, understanding what you do. But not only that, really connecting with people, not just the people that you work with within an organization, but building that connection and showing that level of care and genuineness when you work with people. You could say, you hear it all the time. You have people that are so good at what they do, super good. But if you can't get along with them, if you're not able to build that trust, not be able to clearly communicate what you are doing, how you are doing it, and also adding in a personal touch. I really do care about the colleagues that I work with. Every CRO will tell you, we're an extension of your team. That, and they mean it. They really do. But as an individual person, try to think about, as you progress through your career development, you want to be known as the person that knows what you're doing and you could work well with them. And that's how I was able to progress up the career ladder, because I wanted to know people. I wanted to learn as much as I can. And I made mistakes. Trust me. I learned from them and I didn't get offended, and I wanted the constructive feedback. And I wasn't scared to learn something new as well. Going from being tactical to being strategic, that's what vice presidents do. It's a strategic role that takes a look at the business itself. But you have to have that level of savviness when it comes to the tactical work to make those right business decisions. And I think most of my leaders that have worked with me saw that within me and wanted to encourage me to keep moving forward to reach to whatever goal, whether it's a VP role, whatever, manager, senior manager, CDM2, clinical data manager 2. They helped me because they saw that within me. I took the initiative.
And I think that's so important, because I think most people that we've spoken to who have been in their company for like 10, 15 years or whatever the case may be, it always comes down to the people that you work with, so the team, or B, you have a manager or whatever the case, whoever you report into, or the team you report into, or the people surrounding you really believe in you and see something in you. And then I think that's what we found with everyone or most of the people actually that we've spoken to who have been in their business for such a long time or have been in the same company for such a long time, because these days, you just don't see that anymore. When you speak to someone who has been in the business for 10 years, you're like, wow, why are you there for so long? What's going on? So I know at the top of this podcast, we mentioned that you are a co-founder, and we are co-founders of CK Pharma Solutions. So we love connecting with other co-founders. So congrats on your business. As a co-founder of AgileDM, what motivated you to transition from the CRO world to start in your own company?
There's quite a bit of information tools that I picked up throughout my career working over on the site side, having worked with sponsors and obviously on the CRO side. And then when it comes time to transition from working for an organization and then being that organization, creating your own business, you just know in your heart that it's time to go ahead and share your talent with others out there. Share what you've learned, that toolbox that you built over time, those connections that have grown to really trust what you do and listen to your guidance, and to know that they understand how you're able to strategize and put together a plan to help clean their data. So I figured, after being at the last CRO that I was at for like really 10 years, I talked to myself and I said, I'm up there. I'm actually turning 51 this year, and it's time for a career change. I wanted to go ahead and take that leap of faith and just see how well I would do on my own as a consultant. And it's actually done really well. Everything that I mentioned, ladies, in today's podcast, building the connection, taking the initiative, learning how to fall and pick yourself back up again, that's when I knew. It took me all those years to realize, you know what, I think I could do this on my own. I have what it takes. And like you said, Khalud, I had people that believe in me, not just my family, my friends, my colleagues, and my former supervisors. All of them are in support of my new career endeavor. And that's what helped me decide.
Love that. And I know we've been asked this question, like, did you guys know you wanted to start your own business from, day one? And our answer is always like, no, but I think we just knew, like you said, in our hearts, it was time. So was it something that I guess when you started in programming or data management, did you know that eventually you would want to own your own business? Or was it just like, as you went through your career, you're like, this is potentially something I would like to do?
Definitely the latter. I mean, as a biochemist and a programmer, I used to like to be in my own box. I'll do what I need to do and then I'll get it done. Then as we grow and mature and then we figure out what we want to do in life, that's when the gears start turning. So it took me all those years to realize, okay, this is something that I want to do. So it didn't come overnight. It was always kind of marinating in my mind that this is eventually something I want to do on my own, but it doesn't come at a whim. There's always planning. So that's another thing. You could have a seed and you could plant it, you could manifest it, but when you really want it, you have to work towards it. It just doesn't come naturally. So to open up AgileDM, and then I also have another firm, DataFit Consulting, that's focused just on SaaS programming. That there was quite a bit of infrastructure and logistics to set up, and thinking through, how are we going to set this up? How am I going to set this up? What do I need to get this started? What are the tools that I could pull in from my past experience? And then who can I speak with to help me? Someone that's done it. So I've had quite a bit of other discussions with other business owners, and they've shared with me so many pitfalls and things to look out for. And for that, I feel so blessed to be able to reach out to those resources to support this growth.
Yeah, I think when you talk with other co-founders, it kind of always helps because they've been through it before. And I guess, how did you prepare to start your own business? What is there anything that you did, or was there any preparation that you had to take before you started your own business?
Well, a lot of it is really understanding what's the current climate in clinical research these days. What are customers looking for? I mean, there's quite a bit of CROs out there. I'm a consultant, and I understand that our needs as a contractor and a consultant are very short term. But we have to figure out, what is it do our clients, do our sponsors, what are they looking for as it relates to keeping us kind of different? What's the differentiator? So with all the years of working on the service side, I was on the side where I had to select contractors, and work with different people that are doing data management and SaaS programming, database build work. And with that, after all those interviews and taking a look at what what individuals, how they worked, and if they worked out. I kind of had a feeling after working with our clients, what clients want. So with that said, it's very important for us to go ahead and understand, to take a look at what our clients are saying, really hone in and listen, be an active listener, and then decide, okay, what can I offer that's going to set me apart from every other CRO or every other consultant that's out there. So again, to answer your question, as far as setup, it's really just listening and understanding what can I bring to the table that's going to set me apart from everything else. And I think I figured out most of that, and we can't figure everything out. And then from that point, that's where I was able to build. And I mean, I've built data management groups at 3 different CROs. So I know from scratch, I don't even need anything. I could just from the top of my head, how to write the SOPs, what is needed, what are the requirements as far as the TMF, and what are the GCDMP, so data management guidelines, and what are the GC, good clinical practice, good documentation practices that are required. Read up on it. That's what's going to help build you as an individual and as a business owner to make sure that you have the right arsenal to be a successful organization.
Yeah. And I think that's great. I think a lot of people who are going to be listening to this podcast, and even on LinkedIn, there's always conversation on how to grow your career in biometrics. And I think one of the things that people don't touch on a lot is what you're doing, is taking that step to doing your own thing and moving and running your own consulting or your own business. So, for example, if someone who's maybe a VP or a senior director, or wherever their level is at, and they're like, actually, this is something that I do want to do. Maybe I do want to start my own business and go and do it by myself. What advice do you have for someone who's considering starting their own business in clinical data management space?
Really do a lot of hands-on. I mean, as you mentioned, being a VP and a senior director, the roles are different. And it depends on the organization that you go to. I never wanted to be away from the hands-on. And I think I know it's very critical to make good business decisions when you know how to do the work. I know there's a lot of different, views, philosophies on that. But in my case, I want to be able to connect with my customer, connect with my client, and articulate exactly what my strategy is for cleaning data. I want to know what's going on with the database. I want to understand how enrollment is going, how is site activation going. All that is key in understanding how to strategize on how to clean your data. It's not just reading a protocol, signing off on a training form. You have to understand how that study is going to be analyzed. What are your primary, secondary, exploratory endpoints? How is any type of disruption in data collection, or what happens at the sites, or what happens at monitoring? How are you going to overcome some of those challenges? With all these years of experience in clinical research, like I said, you are going to experience ups and downs and different types of issues. And I think what customers are looking for is, well, have you dealt with that before? And how are you going to solve it? I've mentioned before that when I used to be a hiring manager, I used to see CVs with 30 years of experience, 25 years of experience. And it's like, amazing. Wow. But then when you really look at the CV, when you look at the resume, 6 months here, 5 months here, 1 year here, maybe 2 years here, I always tell myself, how can you possibly learn as much as you can if you're at short stints at different places? And maybe you're blessed and super intelligent and, you got it. And that's great. I have to make sure that I know what I'm doing, and I have to stay at a place long enough to kind of own and be a subject matter expert. So that's something that people need to really tend not to focus so much on, is like, let's perfect your craft. Let's build that toolbox. Let's know how to handle different issues and scenarios when things are not going to go swimmingly, because they normally don't. So we just have to make sure that we are equipped to go ahead and be problem solvers.
Absolutely. And one of the things you're, making clear on this podcast is the focus of quality, for sure. And that's one of the things that, AgileDM emphasizes, is quality in clinical data management. How do you ensure quality is consistently maintained? And what are some of the biggest challenges you face in doing so?
So quality means we want to make sure, we say in AgileDM, we're protecting your endpoint. So again, the focus is taking a look at the key data that's going to be used for analysis. At the end of the day, we're going to analyze the data. We want to make sure it's as clean as possible so we could go ahead and report outcomes that we expect. We want to prevent harmful treatments from going out there, but we want the good treatments that we know are going to work to get approved. So that's the main goal. So to ensure quality, it really relies on key organizational skills, understanding how to read a protocol, how to collect data, provide a plan on how to clean data. And one of the big things that I mentioned it before is the communication, because data cleaning is not solely the responsible of a data manager, a data coordinator. We have our monitors, we have medical monitors, we have our safety vendors. So we have data coordinators, we have clinical data science, we have statistical programmers, we have biostatisticians. All of us are required to look at data in some fashion to help contribute to the data quality. Now, as a data manager, we also need to make sure we put a plan in place to get the data scrubbed and cleaned. But from a clinical sense, from a medical sense, we also need to make sure we kind of rally the troops together that are involved in data cleaning. So when you say, how do you make sure that the data is cleaned, we have to work together as a collective group, collaborating with one another to ensure that we all understand our roles in the data cleaning process. It's not just one group, data management. So to ensure that data is clean, we all have to be on the same page. That means we have to have an amazing project manager that's going to keep us on the timeline. We have to have plans in place so we're not stepping on each other's toes and checking things when someone else is checking and then we miss something else. So it's about being very organized and very methodical in our approach to data cleaning and documenting everything that we do to make sure that we cover all the points to make sure we are protecting that endpoint. So we really have to understand the data that's being collected and what we need to scrub and clean to ensure that we're going to get the outcomes that we hope to expect as we conduct the trial.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting to look at it from that perspective, that it really is such a group effort for it to be, for quality, not just one person to be really strong. So on that, I think, what many may not think about is when it comes to hiring and how important it is to not just one person be a strong data manager, not one person just be a strong biostatistician, but the whole team. And from the candidate's perspective is to really look at, what team you're joining.
If I were to offer advice to someone that wants to go into data management or someone that's already in data management, but then they want to go ahead and elevate their career by changing careers or going for a new role, I recommend make sure that you know what you're talking about. So when we look at a data manager, we want to know someone that's going to know how to ingest and understand a protocol. How do you take something that's meant for sites and a medical doctor to read and understand how to conduct the trial, what procedures to perform, into data sets, into fields that are succinct, that are compliant to CDAF, CDISC, that's going to flow into SDTM, eventually ATOM data sets. You have to understand that flow and you have to be able to speak through all of that. So you want data quality? It starts with collecting the data, understanding the protocol, building up a CRF specification, building a good database, be able to UAT, user acceptance test that database, and then developing good edit checks. That's going to not just catch, this is missing, this is out of range, but really think through cross CRF. How is data going to be inconsistent with one another? Think about the safety of the patient. What are the key things that in the protocol that we're looking at to ensure that the subject doesn't experience toxicity? How are you going to help support catching some of that as we're looking, as the data keeps coming in? How do you look at it from a high level point of view, aggregate wise, not just by patient, but putting it all together? All of that, including safety, taking a look at SAEs, reconciling them, looking at external data, reconciling them. You have to provide a complete comprehensive plan to ensure that we try to catch as many discrepancies as possible. So when it gets to programming, because I've done, statistical programming before, we don't want to get to that point and we're finding all these issues with the data during programming that actually delays a lot of timelines and actually may lend to possibly missing out on a safety event. Wow, these labs where I'm taking a look at univariates, this one's really high. Is it a data entry issue, or is the subject really experiencing something bad that's happening in their body as a result of X, Y, and Z? So when you go into that interview, you have to make sure that you know from soup to nuts about data management all the way to post-close. So I know it's a lot, but that's what I looked for when I was hiring. And that's what I think as I'm putting myself out there and my brand and my business, I want to make sure that these sponsors, these clients understand this is what we're hiring. This is who we want to join our team. And this is the person that's going to help augment the team to make our data, as clean as possible so we could help these patients.
Yeah. And I think that ties into what you said earlier. If you're in a job for 2 to 3 months, you're not learning what you need to learn. So therefore, when you go to an interview, you can't really speak on what you've done because you haven't done enough. So we're kind of like, if you really want to be that expert in what you do need to, and I've heard this from different managers before, hiring managers, where it's like, Khulud, if they haven't spent 2 years at a role, what have they really learned? Because by the time it's like you've done your training, you've kind of gotten accustomed to the different data, all that stuff. It's like, oh, now I'm going to leave. It's like you don't even have enough time to even do the actual job. So I think, do you think that goes hand in hand in terms of how long you spend at a place versus being able to go to an interview and really speak on your expertise and really be able to kind of do the job, if that makes sense?
Yes, I think it does. I mean, there's a couple of things. You could stay at a place for a long time. You have to have the drive within you to learn. I mean, I stayed at places for a long time because I wanted to learn. I wanted to master what my role is about as a data manager, as a database builder, as a statistical programmer. I wanted to understand, as I'm in my role as a data manager, how does my work affect downstream? The one thing I don't like is if people are waiting for me to get something done. So you have to have that level of ownership, accountability, and then also have that team player attitude so that for you being at a company for that long, you are going to make connections with people, whether, it be in your team or outside of your team or with the sponsor. So you have to be all in when it comes to working together because you're all trying to achieve the same thing. If your goals are different, then maybe you need to reassess what you need to do as far as your career. But yes, longevity in the company is important. And then not only that, taking the initiative to learn more. I mean, I asked to go on monitoring visits. I asked to go to a site initiation visit. I asked to see if I could program. I mean, I don't wait for things to come. If I know that I think it's going to be important for me to have an understanding of how the entire clinical research process worked, I'm going to go ahead and put myself out there to see what I could learn. And I think that's how I was able to progress quickly, but it is still a learning. You're always learning. It's always a learning journey.
Yeah. And I think it's also important I don't want people to listen to this and be like, I have one position where I was only for 2 months. Is that bad? That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about candidates who really, and we post about this a lot on LinkedIn. Like it's really important to be able to kind of, when you're speaking to a recruiter or speaking in an interview, to give the reason why you've jumped around so much, because that question is going to come up every time. But this is not for people who have gone to a company or have a role that didn't turn out what they thought it would be, or the company didn't do great, so they had to leave. This is obviously for people who have kind of jumped around every chance that they've gotten. So yeah.
Yes. And it's totally understood as to why people change jobs. And if you are able to be in an interview, or if you're starting a business, and if you're able, or you're working with a potential client, so say you're at a CRO, you're doing a bid defense, talking through what you do, how to do it, how to solve problems. If you could learn all that in a short amount of time, then you are blessed. And I think that's amazing. So really a lot of those CVs that come through, I will still pull and interview them. And I'll make sure that I ask the questions so I could have a better understanding of your experience and what you've done. So that's important. Study, read up on new guidances, understanding the innovations that are out there right now. And that's another thing, being in data management for 30 years, there's things that change. So we can't always stay the same. We always have to take a look at what's out there, what's new and emerging, and be able to adapt and be agile. And so that's very important to understand how those innovations can affect what we do in data management. What I did back in the 90s may not be as relevant these days anymore. So, but that's something that we all need to work on, is taking a look at where the industry is going as we move forward.
Yeah. And you touched on this a little bit earlier in the podcast, but looking back on your career, what role has networking played in your journey, and what advice would you share with others following a similar path?
So networking is really about building connections. So I'm very blessed to have been working on the service side of the industry, of the clinical research industry. Like I said, I've been in CRO, basically just went from a site to a CRO. So I have the very grateful opportunity to work with different people from different sponsors, different people from different CROs. My colleagues that I built so much love and trust and connections with knew how hard I worked and how invested I am, and how I will go above and beyond to get work done with the utmost highest quality. So all of us move on in our careers. We change roles, we change organizations. But what you don't forget is the person that helped you out, and the person that was always there for you, and the person that always got it done and got it done on time. And so with that said, when you say networking, my colleagues who turned into friends, when I started my business, and some of my clients as well, they remembered me. And when I put it out there on LinkedIn and I put myself out there, they reached out going, wow, I remember you were an amazing data manager. You're an amazing SaaS programmer. And I want to work with you. I'm here at this company. So the networking is very important, because anytime you're working in a team meeting, your own team internally, or you're meeting with a sponsor, or meeting with a colleague, or meeting with another business vendor, that is always the opportunity for networking and connections, or building friendships. I like them. I like making friends.
Yeah, it's so important, because I think people forget how small the market is. And we like to remind candidates of this all the time. Like, who you have to leave a good impression everywhere you go, and whoever you work with, whoever you're reporting into, whoever your hiring manager is. If you're interviewing, you have to always leave on a good note and a good impression, because you never know when you're going to come across these people. And the industry is so small, you're very likely that you're going to cross paths down the line. So you always want to make sure you're on good note with everyone that you cross paths with.
I had a mentor, and she's so great. And she taught me, and if she's watching it, she knows. She always said, API, always positive intention. That stayed with me forever. Just know anyone that you work with, there's always positive intent. Put that first. I know there's times I get rough. There's going to be meetings where things get confrontational. But just remember, at the end of the day, we all just want to do a good job, and to have that level of understanding. That's where I feel it's very important. And where sometimes, our emotions get the best of us, but you have to maintain that professionalism and know that in the end, we just all want to do what's right and what's good for the patient. And that's why I center it back. When I used to lead my DM groups, it always comes back to the same thing. It's about patient centricity. Think about your mom, your child, your aunt, your uncle, your grandparent, your friend, your neighbor that's going through, they have cancer, they have heart disease, they have liver disease, whatever they have going on right now, that might be someone in your life. So what we're working on right now will help. So we have to center it back. Otherwise, it's just a job. But if you want to make this job into a career, if you want to make it into a business, you really have to ground yourself as to why you're doing it. And I think that's important. Positive intention, and then knowing that we're helping people.
Yeah. And I know I know we've spoken about this before. We recently collaborated with Columbia University to help graduates in biometrics to get into this industry. And, I think when we first spoke, you mentioned you've developed a training curriculum for recent grads. I guess for all the grads out there, what key skills do you believe are kind of the most important for new professionals, entering the field of clinical data management today?
Really is it's really understanding how data flow works, how databases work, how storing data works. So when we have data everywhere, in SAS, they say the answers are everywhere. Just look at the data. Just know that's where all your answers are going to be. So anyone that's graduating from college and they want to go into pharma, and they clinical research is an untapped area. I used to go to job fairs at the local university, San Diego State University, University of California, San Diego. Everybody that's going for a bio degree, or master's of public health, a chemistry degree, they want to go into bench science, they want to be a doctor, they want to be a pharmacist. So I come in there, I do a presentation on clinical research. And one of the things they asked me, I was like, well, how am I supposed to know about the existence of this? And how do I find jobs? What do I need to have? Well, you need to understand science. You have that background. It's very important for you to read up on understanding how these scientific approach is, and understand patient care as well. And you can't be afraid of a computer, and you have to have logic and, again, good communication skills as well. So super organized, detail oriented, know your math, understand your science, at a high level, and then just understand how to take a look at data from top to bottom, how it's collected, how it's analyzed, and how can you approach things that are not going to match, not going to make sense. So, understanding the statistic, that's why I say math is very important as well. So that will help you kind of get an edge on trying to get your foot in the door as far as clinical research.
Absolutely. Well, huge thanks to our guest, Sheila, for the great insights today. And thanks for listening to Statistically Speaking, a CK Pharma Solutions podcast.